You ready?
I'm always ready. As Dolly said in
I'm
The
always
Best Little
ready.
Whorehouse in Texas.
Ed Earl. Such a great movie.
You ready? I love that sneaking around scene.
That's the best.
Just so good.
The best.
Those two
were sneaking around.
They had some chemistry. When I see the Dolly and Bird on screen, I wish for him to have had that sort of love in his life. Someone like Dolly.
Yeah.
That would bring that much joy, because the two of them on screen in that movie are just chef's kiss.
Carl's a lucky man.
Yeah.
She's
just such an angel.
She is. We're all blessed. And I hope we continue to be blessed for many, many years to come.
Me too. Hello.
And welcome to Once More Unhinged, our weekly chat show where we get together to discuss whatever we're reading, watching, listening to, or engaging with this week. I'm Jen Katz.
And I'm Ryan Something.
Happy Pride, Ryan Something.
Happy Pride.
Belated.
Month, summer, year.
Yes. So when this episode comes out, Pride Month is technically over. However, it should be Pride Month every month. It should be Pride Day every day. You should always be proud to be who you are.
That's right.
So, yeah. This episode is going to be a little different than our typical Unhinged. Not too different, but it's a theme.
It is.
Yeah.
And what's our theme?
We're going to celebrate our favorite queer stories and characters that made significant contributions to LGBTQIA+ representation in the arts, in books and music, TV, movies, and also some that impacted us personally.
That's right.
So, very excited.
Before we dive into our celebration of queer stories and characters, we want to take a moment to acknowledge something very important. While we share our perspectives, we do so as individuals who deeply respect and admire the rich diversity and experiences within the LGBTQ+ community. We do not claim to speak for any group, and we recognize that our viewpoints are just one piece of a larger, beautiful mosaic. Yeah. We hope our discussion will honor the incredible impact that these stories and characters have had, and we invite you to share your own reflections with us as we continue to learn and grow. Thank you for joining us for this celebration.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so glad we're getting to do this.
Me too.
We really wanted it to come out during June. We wanted this episode to come out during the month of June, which is Pride Month in the United States. And maybe it's Pride Month everywhere. I'm not sure. But scheduling, production, we're the schedulers and
we're bad buys. We don't know.
Feels like it's very on trend or on brand for us. Yeah. So one of the reasons why I wanted to do an episode like this is, I help put the B, LGBTQIA+. And it is something that took me a while to really recognize and feel ownership in. I knew, from middle school that while I had a crush on this boy in my class, I also thought girls were really attractive. Mm-hmm. And as a sixth, seventh grader in a Catholic school in a very small conservative town, that was not it was not a conversation. And I didn't really understand it. I remember weirdly this Lifetime movie about a woman who was in love with another woman. Mm-hmm. And that was the first time I had really seen, I think in the movie they call it homosexuality depicted. And I was like, oh, that's a thing. And I enjoyed watching it. But I didn't not enjoy watching, Laguna Beach and all that other stuff I was watching where the boys and the girls were making out.
Right.
So I didn't really understand what that meant. And same thing, as I got older in high school, there were, again, small town, very conservative. There were gay people in my high school, but there was only one out person in the entire 4 years I went to high school. And she was, a junior at that time. It was just not talked about. I definitely I had boyfriends, but there was a couple girls I definitely had mad crushes on. One of my really good friends, she didn't go to that school. She went to a different school. And it wasn't just I found her attractive. I had a crush on her. I was like, what does this mean? Who am I? And, I think in the 90s and 2000s for sure, the idea of being bisexual, I think even in the queer community, was you're confused.
Sure.
You don't know what you want.
I think a lot of places it still is.
Oh, it definitely still is. But I think even especially then, you would have you have to be one or the other. Mm-hmm. And if you don't feel one or the other, something's wrong. Right. Or if you are with a man, then you must be always thinking about being with a woman, like something's missing. And it took getting out of high school, moving out of that town, mm-hmm. being around other people, other experiences, other stories to be like, no, you can be a bisexual person and be in a relationship with a man, right? Or be in a relationship with a woman, or be married like I am. I am married. I am in a monogamous relationship with a man who I love. It's, heteronormative, but that doesn't make me any less bisexual.
Sure.
And I want to shout out somebody who included me as a member of the queer community. And Ben, if you're listening, it was Ben, mm-hmm. Ben. We were hanging out and I was just talking to him about it. He identifies as gay, and I was just like explaining, this is confusing even for me, but he was like, well, babe, you're queer. Like, but how can I be queer? I'm married to a man. He's like,
bless your heart.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and that just, it like unlocked something in me. And, mm-hmm. As you mentioned, there are still people today. Within the last year, had a really intense conversation with somebody who basically was like, I don't understand. Mm-hmm. And if I was married to someone like you, I would be disgusted. I'm like, okay, sure.
Well, that's your viewpoint.
That's your thing. And
you don't have to be married to someone like me.
Exactly. Yeah. You could never.
They could not.
And it ended with like, so what you're saying is if your husband, you guys got divorced or he died. And I was like, whoa, okay. Took it there. You could remarry a man or you could remarry a woman. I was like, that's the way you want to look at it. Yes. I love people, not the parts. Parts are cool, but it's like not the only thing. But those people are few and far between. I've got people like you who make me feel seen and appreciated. Yeah. My husband, even my children, not that I've been like, girls, I'm bisexual, but we've just had organic conversations about, my 6-year-old is like, there's a girl in my class who has a crush on another boy. Like, what is that? Yeah, that happens. I had crushes on boys. I had crushes on girls. It's natural as you get older. Yeah. And there hasn't been a blink about it,
Good.
So I just wanted to celebrate that part of myself, but also recognize, and you did such a beautiful disclaimer. I come from a position of privilege. I'm white. I'm in a heteronormative relationship with a white man. Mm-hmm. I understand it's a privileged position to be in when the rights of queer people are being attacked federally, locally, statewide. I recognize my position of privilege, and that's why I don't want to speak for everyone, but right. That's why I wanted to do this episode and celebrate Pride, and want to say to you, thank you for always making me feel seen and appreciated, and for me to be myself.
Well, thank you for the same. You always make me feel very comfortable. You've always been very accepting of kind of my open fluidity with my sexual choices. You said that you helped put the B in LGBTQ plus, and yeah. I think I could safely say that you helped put the B in me, or at least help me feel more comfortable in accepting who I am and providing a safe space for how I feel and have felt for a very long time. So I just wanted to say thank you. And I could not put it any more eloquently than you have, but I'll say ditto.
Ditto. That's what I do when I'm brain fried, and Ryan will say something really thoughtful and kind, and I'm just like, ditto. But it's coming from a genuine, like, I feel the same.
That's what I'm saying. I genuinely feel the same, and I want to thank you for being who you are. Your courage and your strength and your openness has provided a safe space for me to feel the same and to express that to the people that I love and anyone else who might be listening. So anyway, thank you very much. You're
safe here. You're accepted here.
Yeah.
All are welcome.
I love you. Thank you.
Love you too. So we wanted to discuss
the impact of
yeah.
representation in media, and how we're seeing ourselves in certain stories can affirm identities and provide support in a safe space.
Yeah.
Jenny, what are some of your favorite queer characters from media?
Shocking no one.
Okay.
Gotta go with Willow Rosenberg and Tara McClay
Willow
from Buffy.
Spoiler alert for
Spoiler
our
alert.
Buffy
Oh,
listeners.
yes. Okay, sorry. So Buffy has a character, Willow Rosenberg. She enters into a relationship with a woman in season 4 and 5 named Tara. And it's a beautiful love story. Those two have great chemistry. It's not for the male gaze, which I think a lot of female relationships for the longest time in movies and TV shows were for the male gaze only.
Wild Things
Yes.
and Cruel Intentions are two movies that come to mind in the 90s.
Yeah. I love those movies.
Love those movies.
But they're not, it's sensationalized, I think, more than just...
I think it's safe to say that.
Yeah, a romance. And Willow and Tara have a beautiful romance. So Willow and Tara were one of the first on-screen female on female kisses in television history. There'd been a couple before, but it was more for, and now I'm remembering, it was more for like ratings. Do you remember when ratings and Sweeps Week used to be a big thing for TV shows? It was like, we're gonna have two chicks make out or kiss to like bump the ratings up. And this was their story. This was part of their story. And, you know, Joss Whedon is a lot of things. But from everything I have read about Willow and Tara's storyline, he fought tooth and nail to have them kiss. If that is not accurate or if anyone has heard anything differently, please correct me. I'm just going off of what I've read over the years, being a big Buffy fan and on Reddit and all the websites and the forums and stuff. So please correct me if that's wrong. But yeah, I mean, Willow and Tara, and I do have some quibbles because I believe Willow is bisexual because she was in a relationship with Oz, a very loving and committed, and I mean, she loved Oz. And then when she gets with Tara, all of a sudden she's gay, and I think that was just the late 90s, early 2000s. I think so. It was a time period. It was a time period. But I love their love story. I think it's beautiful. Yeah, that's probably one of my favorite. I just love Buffy, so of course it has a really special place in my heart.
I do too. And speaking on that storyline, one of the most beautiful moments of the Buffy series is the moment where Willow comes out to Buffy.
Yeah.
And Buffy recognizes that. Do you want to talk a little bit about that moment where she's in the dorm room? Is that correct?
Yeah, they're in the dorm, and this is the episode when Oz has come back, and there's some confusion with where Willow's feelings lie. And, you know, Willow's really upset, and she's, you know, Buffy's like, are you upset because of Oz, basically? Or what's going on? And she's like, well, it's because of Tara. And Buffy's like, Oz is into Tara? And Willow just kind of looks at her, and Buffy just goes, oh. Yeah. Oh. And there's no like disgust. There's no, what's wrong with you? It was just love and acceptance. Right. And it was beautiful. And that's what we all want, right? When we want to be ourselves, we want the people in our lives who we love the most to respond that way. And sure, it's startling. Buffy's obviously startled.
Sure.
You know, she has known her friend as someone who loved, you know, Xander. Yeah. Who loved Oz. And now her friend is like, hey, I'm with a girl. Of course, you might be like, oh, okay. Yeah. Cool. But yeah, it's one of my favorite moments in that show. And
I think it was handled very well.
I do too.
I'm sure that there are critics who could say that they could have done more. And I'm sure there are critics on the other side who say that they did too much. Yeah. But in that moment, for the time period, for how people handled coming out and for feeling safe, I think it was just handled exceptionally well. And it was just very beautiful. It was very soft. And it was just this intimate moment where you understood and Willow felt understood. Yeah. And Buffy provided that safe space for her. And I just thought it was so beautiful.
Yeah. I loved it. And again, if this was made in 2024,
absolutely, it could be a little different.
It'd be different. But I think for, you know, when was that? 2001?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Folks are still very closeted.
Groundbreaking.
Yeah, it's groundbreaking still.
And that just holds such a special place in my heart. Even though I watched it after the fact, watching it in 2011 was still like, whoa, Okay, that's amazing. Oh, I just love that show so much. I could go on and on about Buffy, but we'll get there on our other show, Once More Rewatch Podcast. Tune in every
Please
Friday.
join us every Friday.
Please. Ryan, what's one of your favorite queer characters in movies, TV shows, or unfurl your scroll?
Where do I start?
Yeah.
I was thinking about this conversation before we started this recording this morning because there's been so many that I've seen over the years. I was very blessed to have been raised in a matriarchal household where everyone was very accepting and open. And, my mother and my grandmother had a lot of queer friends and family members in their lives who they were very open and accepting with. And so, I had the privilege of being around that in a very safe space and being open to that for much of my life. But, there's a couple that come to mind, one of which I will argue until my deathbed that they're just friends.
Lord.
Or just kind of roommates where they are, but Bert and Ernie.
I think Bert and Ernie, even if they don't consummate their relationship, they are queer characters.
They absolutely love each other. And I do believe that there is a love and a friendship that two people can have that is so strong that isn't necessarily romantic and doesn't necessarily have to be put into a box of being queer or not queer. But I do believe that these two characters love each other very much. But as far as like media goes, I have to say my favorite queer character has got to be, in fact, most of this cast, but the cast from The Birdcage.
Oh, that's a great movie.
Robin Williams and Nathan Lane, those two together, and this was like huge.
This came out in like what, 96? Yeah, 96.
Yeah, absolutely. But the film really broke stereotypes by providing this positive representation of these two characters, using comedy to deliver this powerful message about family and to promote acceptance. And when I saw this film in 1996 as a 16-year-old, this was big. And much of the mainstream public is still probably uncomfortable having these conversations or even acknowledging within themselves their own feelings. And so to see characters and to see it done this way is fantastic. And this film, the comedic approach to LGBTQ plus issues and its cultural significance really had an impact on me. Yeah. So if you've not seen The Birdcage, it's directed by Mike Nichols. It's a comedic farce and an American remake, by the way, of a 1978 French comedy, La Cage aux Follies, which was based upon a 1973 French play based upon the same name by Jean Poiret. Yeah. But Robin Williams plays Armand Goldman. He's a gay man who owns a South Beach drag club called The Birdcage.
Robin Williams, may his memory be a blessing.
Oh my God, what an amazing actor. Yeah. And his partner, Albert, played by Nathan Lane. To perfection. Also an amazing actor, especially in the LGBTQ community, and being able to represent those characters. Nathan Lane stars as the club's drag queen Starina.
Oh God, I want to watch The Birdcage now.
And their son Val, played by Dan Futterman, announces that he's engaged to Barbara Keeley, which is Callista Flockhart. No, and things get complicated because Barbara's father is Senator Kevin Keeley, played by my favorite male actor, Gene Hackman. Yeah, who is a staunch conservative politician. So to impress the in-laws, Armand and Albert have created this charade of of this normal straight family, and it leads to these hilarious situations. There are several incredible, notable supporting actors, including Diane Wiest as Senator Keeley's wife, Gene Hackman's wife, Hank Azaria, who
Agador
absolutely stole the show. I mean, it was tough to top Nathan Lane, but Agador Spartacus, the eccentric and accident-prone housekeeper was absolutely hysterical.
When he's in those shoes and he's trying
to
to
walk in normal shoes was hysterical. Christine Baranski plays Robin Williams' ex, which is Val's mother. So you have Robin Williams, who's a bisexual character.
Is he bisexual?
Here he is. Yes, he's attracted to women. He loves Val's mother, Christine Baranski, but he, his soulmate and his partner is Nathan Lane, and that's who he's
love that.
That's who he's with and married to. Anyway, this movie in particular, when we talk about like my favorite queer characters, I think this was one of them. And I can remember watching this film with my grandmother, who was a huge queer advocate and ally for all of her life. I remember watching this movie with her, and the amount of joy that it brought her was something that brought me a lot of joy, because, and I think it brought her a lot of joy because it was nice to see this mainstream.
Yeah.
And it was just funny.
It was funny. Yeah, I love that movie. It has such a special place in my heart.
Mm-hmm.
I love Robin Williams. I mean, I grew up in the 90s, and Robin Williams was Hook. He was Mrs. Doubtfire. Or he wasn't Hook. He was in Hook. I know he wasn't that, but
he was Peter Pan.
He felt like such an integral part of my childhood.
Oh my gosh.
And Jumanji. I mean, all these movies. And so when I finally was old enough to watch The Birdcage, I was like, oh, this is perfection. And, I know a big conversation has been in the past few years about queer characters being played by queer identifying people.
Uh-huh.
And I think we do need more of that, right? Like, there was kind of a running joke for a while. If you wanted to win an Oscar, play a gay person or play someone, a musician, like biopic. I think we've gotten better. But I think this movie, like you said, was just such a loving portrayal of these two men who love each other, who love their kid. It was funny. It was accessible to everybody, because to me, watching that, if you grew up in a heteronormative household, you can identify with these feelings and these situations. And I love that movie. We're going to have to do it for rewatch. Such a good film. Yeah.
Watching the character of Gene Hackman come around with the help of all of these characters and these hilarious
and getting in drag
and these hilarious scenarios of acceptance of his daughter marrying into this family. And as you said, at the end where spoiler alert, where he gets into drag. I mean, it was just so beautiful, and something that you just really didn't see in mainstream media, where you're promoting this relationship between these two men who are married. They run a drag club in Miami, and to see drag
on TV in a movie
in cinema was fantastic. And of course, we could get into
Priscilla, Queen of the Desert,
Priscilla and Tu Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, which was another great.
It was hard not to put those on the list.
It
for me.
really was. Patrick Swayze and Wesley Snipes,
John Leguizamo.
Oh my God, that was another big one that my grandmother loved.
What is her name? She played Rizzo. What is that actress's name? She's in it. I cannot think of her. Stalker Channing. Yes.
Oh. Wow. Hey.
Come on. Grease is also an incredibly, I would argue, is a queer musical, but
there are worse things I could do from Grease. Stalker Channing.
Yeah.
Goosebumps. What a performance. Anyway, love Stalker Channing.
I do too.
R.I.P.
I know. Speaking of drag queens, another important LGBTQIA TV show for me was RuPaul's Drag Race.
You love RuPaul's Drag Race.
I do. And I've watched RuPaul's Drag Race since it was on Logo on season 1. I was still living at my parents' house. And I don't really remember if I watched season 1 by itself and then waited for season 2, but I came across it. I was like, what is this? I loved it. And I was like locked in. I was a massive fan. I remember watching season 2 and tweeting a drag queen named Jujubee. And she tweeted me back. And it was like such a big deal. I mean, this must have been 2009, 2010. Yeah. And I loved that show. And I just was enamored with these people living their best lives and living their creative lives and being themselves, gay men dressed as women on TV. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, I don't want to say I was struggling with my identity in the same way someone else might, but I knew that something was, I wasn't, something was off. And this was around the time that I was getting ready to go to college and I was in a not great relationship with this guy. And I just latched onto that show and I would sit in my room and watch it over and over again. And I felt this I felt this inexplicable pull and acceptance. And, I think I've listened to other podcasts where drag queens have discussed like the straight white women's.
Shout out to Big Dipper.
Yes. Sloppy Seconds. Love that. I love Race Chaser. The Bald and the Beautiful, Sibling Rivalry. Like I listen to all these podcasts. And, there are some not, how do I want to word this? A lot of drag queens that I've listened to have discussed the bachelorettes, the white women who like love drag queens and are you loving us and supporting us? And sometimes the answer is no. Like I love you, but I'm voting for people who don't love you, or I'm doing this X, Y, or Z. And I try to be aware of that, but I just loved seeing people live their authentic lives.
I think that's it. The confidence,
yes,
was something that has always been just very, from someone who suffers with severe anxiety
and low self-esteem. I'll be honest,
self-esteem, to see individuals embrace who they are and their authenticity in ways that are unconventional to mainstream, but to hell with what everyone else thinks, and to own it. There's so much strength in that I envy in so many ways. And I think that watching that and seeing these performances is truly magnificent. Yeah.
I love drag. I watched it religiously through probably season 11 or 12. And then I've seen a couple of the, I've seen the first 2 seasons of the UK version. They're those first early seasons before the show got so big, it was like watching these people figure it out. And I'm over here trying to figure it out. And I just really fell in love with it. So yeah, I don't really watch the more recent seasons. Nothing against the recent seasons. I've just haven't kept up with it as much as I'd like. They have I feel like every time I turn around, there's a new season of RuPaul's Drag Race. But I still follow a lot of the queens on social media. I love that. That was just such a special time in my life when I was still living in that really small conservative town, watching RuPaul's Drag Race in my room. Wondering if my parents walked in, what would they think I was watching? And that's what introduced me really to drag. I know we talked about the Birdcage and I had seen it, but that was watching drag from actual drag queens, top to bottom, the whole. Whoa.
Perfect.
Great.
Perfect.
Great. Yeah. So just seeing actual people doing their craft. And yeah, we're lucky. We've got some amazing local drag queens that we support.
We do. Shout out to Bunny and to Zarini.
Yeah. I've taken my kids to a couple drag shows, if they ever have any drag queens reading library books, like we support it. It's just, I think it's a beautiful art form. I think it's fun. And yeah, RuPaul's Drag Race, the early seasons especially, will always hold a very special place in my heart.
Love that.
Yeah. I was watching it pretty hardcore, I think, when we met. I used to watch it with my husband and a friend of ours, and then they got into it, and it's a great show. I love it. Okay. Ryan, what is another queer character story that made a significant impact on you?
Glad you asked. Another one that was significant for me in my upbringing was the movie Philadelphia that came out in 1993. I was 13 years old when this movie came out.
Yeah.
I remember it vividly because we, as a family, had gone to the movies.
Okay.
As one did in the early 90s, the peak of cinema.
I know, sidebar, we just did our first family movie with my husband and I and both of our kids. And we'd taken them separately or whatever, but it was like, oh my God, this is what we used to do in the summers, especially. It was so hot whole family load up and go to the movies. So
I love
it was
so
such a
much.
good memory. Yeah.
So we went to the movies, and this must have been, you know what? This must have been post Christmas, because I remember we would go to the movies after Christmas, either the day after or sometime in that time period. And we all went to the theater, and my mother and my sister and my grandmother went and saw Philadelphia, and I went and saw something like Mrs. Doubtfire or whatever else was coming out around that time period.
Yeah. Which again, man in drag.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, and we love Robin Williams, and that performance was absolutely hysterical.
Yeah.
Sally Field, man, we could unpack that.
Matthew Lawrence, who was my favorite Lawrence brother.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Loved him. And then what's her name? Maura. She played Matilda. I loved her. Yeah, that's a great movie. We're going to have to do that for the other podcast.
Okay.
Philadelphia.
I remember coming out of the theater, and we would meet in the lobby, and the only person in the lobby was my grandmother. And I said, "Hey, where's Mom and Claire?" And she said, "Well, they've gone on, but we're going to stay and we're going to see another movie." And I said, "What are we going to see?" And she said, "I'm taking you to see Philadelphia."
Oh, Nana.
She said, "You need to see this movie." And I said, "I don't want to see this movie. You know, it's too serious. It's about a subject matter that I wasn't really totally familiar with."
Yeah.
It's a 13-year-old. And she was like, "No, you're going to see this movie and we're going to see it together." And I said, "Okay." It was that impactful for her.
Wow.
And we watched it. And I remember coming out of this movie with my grandmother and realizing the impact that this movie had on the context of the AIDS crisis.
Oh, yeah.
And this film's role in raising awareness and changing the public perception of AIDS in the LGBTQ plus community. And if you're not familiar with Philadelphia, Philadelphia was directed by Jonathan Demme. It tells the story of Andrew Beckett, played by Tom Hanks, who is a lawyer who contracts HIV/AIDS, and he sues his former law firm for wrongful termination after they discover his condition.
Yeah.
Jason Robards, who is one of my favorite actors of all time,
he's amazing.
Plays the head partner of this law firm, and they discover while sitting in a steam room that Tom Hanks has lesions, and one of the other partners recognizes that they're lesions, and he's on his way to become partner. And overnight, a file goes missing off of his desk, and it's an important client, and they blame him and they fire him. But he finds out later
it was a setup,
that it was set up, and that he was the victim of a wrongful termination because of discrimination against his diagnosis. So, desperate for his own legal representation, he hires a attorney, Joe Miller, played by Denzel Washington.
To perfection. I don't remember this movie that well, but I remember Denzel Washington especially.
Denzel Washington's performance as a homophobic individual, an ambulance chaser, eventually takes the case, but his performance was spectacular, as was Tom Hanks.
Yes.
I mean, this was like,
goes without saying.
I don't remember how many Oscars it won, but it was a contender for sure.
Yeah.
Together they fight against the law firm's ruthless legal team, led by Mary Steinbergen, who's married to Ted Danson.
They're so cute together.
They're such a great couple. I love them on Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yeah.
And he ends up winning the case. Unfortunately, the character ends up passing away, and it is such a profound movie. The impact that it's a tearjerker.
Yeah.
But it is something that I appreciate my grandmother taking me to, because I agreed with her opinion that everyone needs to see this film to understand what discrimination looks like. And especially during this time period. I mean, this is the peak of the AIDS crisis and epidemic. So it was a very impactful film. Tom Hanks playing this character, arguably his best performance.
Yeah. And like I said, I know I've seen it. I'd like to watch it as an adult, because I think when I watched it, I was too young to watch it when it came out. And I know I watched it probably in middle school around that time. But for one, I didn't grow up in the AIDS crisis, which you were old enough. Your parents,
I remember
especially,
it.
you remember
I have friends that I lost to AIDS during that time period.
Yeah, and yeah, I'd like to go back as an adult and be able to watch and appreciate. And I've heard, I think we mentioned this earlier with the Birdcage, and I know Nathan Lane is openly gay and out. Mm-hmm. I know there is a whole conversation to be had that Tom Hanks, who is a straight man, played a gay man who dies of AIDS and wins an Oscar, when there's still, even to this day, gay and queer people fighting for roles in Hollywood.
Sure.
But I do think having this story be as not popular, but as, having it in media, I think is important. I think this is a very profound film, and I can just tell from your experience that it made a profound impact on you.
Absolutely. I'll never forget the day that I came out of the movie theater and my grandmother standing there in the lobby saying, "We're going to see another film."
I can picture her with her nails.
She was, I'm so thankful to have someone like that in my life who took the time to recognize that this was something that not only everyone should experience and fully understand, but to want that for her grandson.
That's she was amazing.
Yeah. Just, anyway.
No one was taking me to see Philadelphia. I'll tell you that much.
Well, Jenny, are there any specific characters or films outside of me talking about the Birdcage in Philadelphia that had an impact on you?
Oh, yeah. We're going to, go. Sorry. Yes.
Sorry, this is such a terrible transition.
What is happening to me? Okay.
It's not you. It's me too.
So a film that really made an impact on me must have, I was in middle school, was Frida, directed by Julie Taymor.
I love Frida.
Came out in 2002. I just remember seeing the poster. We had a local video store in the town I grew up. It wasn't Blockbuster. And
love the video stores.
Oh, I know.
Local video stores.
And the lady who owned it always had the posters of the new releases in the window. I used to try to ask her if I could buy them. This woman is sitting on a gold mine of movie posters. She would never let anyone buy them. So I remember seeing the poster, and it's Salma Hayek's face. And it's a Frida, and it's like the red, and she's got her hair is up, and the whole thing. And I was like, I want to watch this. I don't think I really knew who Frida Kahlo was at that time. I don't know. I had an amazing art teacher, so maybe I had heard of her, but I just remember looking at that poster thinking, I want to watch this movie. I love to watch movies. I used to spend a lot of time in my room reading and watching movies.
That's why we're here.
Shocking. And I wore that tape out. I mean, it's like a 2.5 hour movie, isn't it? It's quite long. And it tells the story of Frida Kahlo, played by Salma Hayek, who it follows her from her early life in the suburb of Mexico City called Coyoacan. This movie depicts Frida's resilience, her artistic expression of pain and identity, and her unconventional approach to love and life. She was openly bisexual, and as more time goes on, they've uncovered, maybe not uncovered, things have been like revealed by her estate or people who knew her, love letters between her and other women, love letters or letters to her friends discussing being in love with other women. She was married to Diego Rivera, another Mexican artist, twice. They were married, divorced, got remarried towards the end of her life.
Very tumultuous and toxic relationship between the two of them.
Yes, he was having lots of affairs. She was having affairs. And the movie doesn't shy away from that. And Diego Rivera is played by Alfred Molina.
I love him.
Who's one of my favorite. Oh, the scene after, Leon Trotsky, in real life, this happened, came to stay at the Casa Azul in Coyoacan with Frida and Diego and his wife. He and Frida had a brief liaison. After that came out, he and his wife moved to another house, also in Coyoacan, where he was later assassinated. And Diego is just giving her the business in the street. And he's like, you've broken my heart. This is the man who slept with her sister and who has had multiple affairs. And she says, it was a fuck. I've given more affection in a handshake, which is something he said to her earlier in the movie. It's just, they're brilliant actors.
Yeah.
And arguably Frida Kahlo she's a queer icon. She's, like I mentioned, she was openly bisexual, and the movie touches on that. I think if it was made today, it would probably be a little bit more nuanced with it.
Sure.
I think they really show her relationships with women as she's in New York City, and it's like the revolving door, and that's fine. But I remember watching that as
hitting you over the head, being like, hey,
she's gay. And
bi.
Or bi. And, or she's like, ooh, look at her. She sleeps with men and women. Right. And I remember, being the age, I was like, wow, okay. So other people feel that way. And when we talked about Willow and Tara at the beginning of the episode, a lot of times in media, it was like you were either straight or you were gay. And maybe you were in a straight relationship and now you're in a same-sex relationship, you're automatically gay. This doesn't make her one thing or the other. The film doesn't. They're like, she loved Diego. She was in love with Diego. She had a boyfriend in the beginning of the movie played by Diego Luna, who I loved him, but she also really enjoyed being with women. And they don't try to make her one thing or the other. And that's one of the things I loved about that movie.
One of the things that I love about her as an individual,
Mm-hmm.
you know, embracing her own truth,
Yes.
expressing it boldly.
Yeah.
You know, she paved the way for future generations of LGBTQ plus artists to live authentically and to use their art to explore their identity.
Yeah. You know, there's a very famous picture of her as a young woman. It's a family portrait. It's maybe like 1920. Her mother and all of her siblings, you know, her sisters are all in these dresses and her brothers are in suits and her dad's in a suit and she's in a full suit with her hair kind of slicked back to look like a man. Like she was pushing all the boundaries. I mean, she was a communist, you know, she just lived authentically and she was somebody who was in a lot of pain. You know, she had a really awful accident when she was an 18-year-old, I think.
Traumatic.
You know, very traumatic. We're not going to get into all of her injuries, but she spent the rest of her life in pain and she still lived an authentic life. And I just remember watching that and being like, whoa, it's the same thing with RuPaul, like seeing these people living their authentic lives. It's empowering.
It is.
Yeah. Whether it's fiction or nonfiction or reality TV or whatever, it's very empowering.
Art and her art itself is very empowering.
It is. I don't even feel like I have to say, if you haven't heard of Frida Kahlo or looked at her art, go look at it. But we were very fortunate this last year to go to Mexico City. My husband, my kids and we went to the Blue La Casa Azul, where she lived, where she died. There's so much of her art just right there. My kids were super excited. And so it's great that, you know, something that I loved when I was 12 or this film, I hope to watch it with them one day. And yeah, I mean, Frida is definitely not only in my top 10 favorite films, but just one that showed me a queer woman and how you could live that way. So,
and a beautiful soundtrack.
Oh, La Llorona gives me chills.
Just haunting.
Every time. Yeah.
Absolutely haunting.
Which, speaking of soundtracks,
sure.
We've been talking about movies. We've been talking about TV shows.
What are some other musical, you talking about the soundtrack, are there any musical artists that stand out for you? Yeah,
well, that's not so much the artist as more the song. So Follow Your Arrow by Casey Musgraves, I think came out, I might have been, I could get production on it, but I was late teens, maybe early 20s. I can't remember when Follow Your Arrow came out. Let's ask production. Yeah, the song came out when I was in college and I just immediately wore it out. You know, it says, make lots of noise, kiss lots of boys, or kiss lots of girls if that's what you're into. And it's like, it's so easy.
You know, hearing those sort of lyrics in mainstream media and people kind of pushing the limits from what we were typically exposed to.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that's empowering.
Especially in country music.
And relatable. Well, you know, Willie Nelson did that with his re-release of a song that he recorded in 2006 called Cowboys Are Frequently Secretly Fond of Each Other.
Oh, that's the best.
And
so
I
good.
love that song. Of course, he didn't write it. It was written by a Latin country musician, Ned Settled. Anyway, it was known as the Gay Cowboy Song, and Willie Nelson covered it. It's a great little gay anthem that, you know, kind of tackles the trope of hyper masculine, you know, cowboys and injects humor and honesty by suggesting that there's just might be more to their relationship than meets the eye.
They're not just good pals.
Not just good pals, but, you know, to have a country artist release a song with this theme in 2006 really helped push the boundaries within a genre not known for its LGBTQ plus inclusivity. Right. So while the song doesn't dive into like deep emotional complexities, it is lighthearted. And the approach is challenging the stereotypes that open the door for conversations about masculinity and same-sex attraction between men.
Yeah. And that's what, you know, one of the things I love about music is it can dive into some of these themes in a way that movies and TV also can, but it can be more subtle and more poetic when it's a
That's
song
it.
form.
That's it.
I mean, I love Orville Peck. I know he and Willie, did they just cover this song, re-release it together? Yeah. Orville Peck, who's an openly gay country singer. And, you know, I feel like we're living in such a great time for that kind of representation, especially with country music.
Yeah.
I mean, growing up, if there were openly gay country singers, I don't remember.
Another artist in another genre from my childhood would be Wham and George Michael.
Wham, jitterbug.
Wait,
Yeah.
You go.
So I'm so glad you put Wham on the list because I knew Wake Me Up Before You Go. I feel like you can't. Everyone knows that song.
Oh my gosh!
Like if you don't know that,
we listened to it on repeat when I was a kid, either to and from school or to and from the mall or whatever it was. But man, it was just that poppin' song that my sister and I would jam to in the back seat.
Yeah. And then I remember when George Michael was a solo artist, my mom, I just remember my mom had the video for Freedom on with all the models.
A well-known gay anthem.
Yeah. And I remember seeing the Faith.
Yeah.
Like just a picture of him. I mean, because a lot of that was when I was very young, but I vividly remember that. And then
my sister had the full-length poster on the inside of her closet.
Good for her.
Yeah.
He looks great in that.
It's iconic.
Yeah. Tight jeans, the black cowboy boots, the leather jacket, the 5 o'clock shadow.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so last year, Netflix released a documentary about Wham.
Loved it.
That Andrew Ridgeley was heavily involved in. Who
hot.
If I was alive during the Wham mania, I would have been an Andrew Ridgeley girl.
Absolutely.
I am an Andrew Ridgeley girl to this day. Yeah. He's still tall drink of water. Anyway, yeah, I love the documentary. And it was such a, you know, unfortunately, George Michael, especially in the 90s, was kind of more known for his controversy, you know, the park arresting incident. Not going to get into that.
A lot to unpack.
That's a whole other story. But that's what I really knew of George Michael. And then watching this documentary, and then he, you know, died a few years ago, which is really sad. And I just remember watching the documentary, loving getting to see this side of George Michael.
Yeah.
And how driven he was and how insanely talented he was as a songwriter and a singer. And how, you know, he told Andrew Ridgeley and some of the other band members very early on, you know, I think I'm gay. And everybody, Andrew Ridgeley talks about it. We were all like, okay, we didn't care. But yeah, we were all worried about how his dad was going to take it, how it was going to affect his image. And, you know, I think him having to stay closeted for so long, I mean, I think it did have a negative impact on his mental health, as it does for everybody.
As it does for everyone, yeah.
And so I love that documentary, and it really like brought me into my Wham era.
I'm so happy for that. I loved it
too. Yeah.
Everything She Wants is my, you know, probably absolute favorite Wham song.
Don't know what the hell you want from me. That's such a good line. Yeah, my kids love Last Christmas. We do dance parties before bedtime, and this was last week. It was my oldest choice, and she picked Last Christmas, and we just went to town in the middle of June on Last Christmas.
Christmas in June.
Yeah, and you know, speaking of, you know, George Michael and my kids, it is really easy to explain same-sex love to your children. It's super easy. Okay. We were watching the video for Last Christmas. This was probably around Christmas time. And he's got a love interest, George Michael does in the video.
Such a great video. And watch the documentary and you'll see why it's even better. It
makes it so much more fun watching it, knowing that they were all sloshed. And Andrew Ridgeley looks so good in that video. Anyway.
He does.
So George Michael's got his love and interest. And, you know, my 4-year-old at the time was like, Mommy, is he married to her? I was like, no, it's like a movie. It's like a story. They're acting. And I said, you know, in real life, George Michael wanted to, because we talked, you know, we reference romance in terms of smooching. Yeah. Mm-hmm. George Michael liked to smooch boys. I'm like, oh, he did? Yeah. Did he marry one? I was like, I don't think so. But he might have. I don't know. Then they're like, okay, can we watch Dua Lipa? Like it's easy.
From one icon to another.
Exactly. It's just easy to tell your kids about love. You know what I mean? It's love, and kids understand it more than we do as adults. So
absolutely.
Yeah, we love Wham in this household. We love George Michael. May his memory be a blessing. Yeah. And I just think, again, he did so much for, I think, not only just representation in music, but just being an advocate for LGBTQIA plus people in the world. So
absolutely, yeah. Because when he finally came out, man, George Michael came out.
He was not hiding it. Okay.
All right. So that's a little bit of music and cinema and television. One thing that we haven't touched on is these characters and these themes in literature.
Yeah.
And one book that you recommended to me last year that absolutely gutted me was a book called The Heart's Invisible Furies. And this novel was written by the Irish novelist John Boyne, and it discusses the narrative and characters and its portrayal of queer life in Ireland.
Yeah.
Heart's Invisible Furies follows the life of Cyril Avery, who's a gay man navigating his identity in a very repressive Ireland in the 1940s and onward in the rest of his life. And it unfolds through Cyril's reflections, tracing his search for belonging and self-acceptance.
Yeah.
Jenny, let's talk about this book.
Yes. So this book was recommended to me by a mutual friend of ours. Shout out Jennifer, if you're listening. She's a librarian and
librarian.
Ooh, nice. Man. So during lockdown, our local library started doing like book pickup. You could go online, reserve a book, and then they would put it out pickup style. You could get it. It was amazing.
Love it.
It was such a lifeline. Honestly, if you're listening, library, let's start that again.
Let's do it.
It's so nice. Like, I like going into the library, don't get me wrong, but it's also nice to just
skedaddle, pick it up and scoot.
Yeah. And so she also had started an online book club, I think on Facebook. And I can't remember, and I'm sure she's listening and she probably remembers the whole story. So I'm sorry that I'm butchering it, but I believe she posted about this and I saw that it was Ireland. I love a historical fiction. I was like, oh, I texted her, hey, that book sounds really interesting. You know, do you still have it? Can I check it out? And she's like, yeah, I'll put it aside for you, but it's going to wreck you. It's like, yeah. Okay. Listen, I read. Okay. I'm like, I can handle heavy, sad, like whatever, sister. She's like, okay, but for real, it's going to wreck you. I'm like, I'll pick it up when, I'll get it tomorrow. Wow. I mean, it wrecked me. I blew through this book. It's so well written and it gets you from the jump. And I was like catatonic for a day after I finished it. It is so intense and visceral and lyrical, and it is relatable. I am not a gay man. I didn't grow up in Ireland. I didn't grow up in the 1940s, but the way that John Boyne writes Cyril's repression and his fear and his constant looking over his shoulder and this, his relationship with Julian, his friend who he meets when he's young and he's very much in love with.
Right.
Julian, and it's that friendship is toxic in a way, and he's like, he doesn't want Julian to know that he's in love with him, but he also wants Julian to know that he's in love with him. That's something we've all experienced, whatever you identify as, loving somebody who
unrequited love.
Yes. And then you've got the story of Cyril's birth mother, Catherine, who was unwed and pregnant at 16, cast out of her village, gave Cyril up for adoption to.
So that, all these different narratives, there's multiple storylines throughout this. And I'm not totally one that gets behind the nonlinear storytelling.
Yeah.
But in this capacity, because of the list of characters that we encounter here, including the flamboyant friend of Julian, with whom Cyril has this complicated friendship with, the love of his life, Bastian.
Oh, God, Bastian.
Who offers him these pockets of joy and acceptance finally in his life.
Yeah, which he has to leave Ireland to find.
Right, because there's the constant threat of the societal disapproval, the legal repercussions of homosexuality hangs very heavy over this character. And the novel really portrays the queer life as a fight for survival, love, freedom, and just to be oneself in a world that demands conformity.
Yeah.
This book wrecked me.
Yeah.
In the best way possible. I remember crying. I remember texting you and being like, God damn it. Like I just finished another chapter.
Yeah.
I would, and this has been a long time since I would stay up until the wee hours of the morning because I just
Can't put
wanted
it down.
to finish. I wanted to get to the next chapter. I was so invested in all of these characters, including his terrible adoptive parents.
Maud.
But written as just these fantastic characters.
Yeah, I mean, and they always get his name wrong. And I was like, Cyrus.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, the poor guy, you really feel for him.
Yeah.
And this book just sucks you in.
Mhm.
And, you know, especially if you can identify with this character, which the two of us can, it absolutely will wreck you. But it's a beautiful, beautiful novel.
I know there's some controversy with John Boyne about some of his other novels. I don't want to get into that. Separating the art from the artist is a whole other conversation. I just want to talk about this book, which is well written. It's a gut punch. It's a gut punch of a novel. And I put it kind of up there with Pachinko.
Okay.
In the way of like, it's bleak.
Yeah.
But it's so beautifully written and you cannot put it down. So
many beautiful moments in this book that will, pull at your heartstrings. This is in my top 3 favorite novels of all time.
Top 3.
Yeah, and I really want to thank you for recommending that to me.
Absolutely.
Because it had a serious, impact on me and how I was feeling and helped me to unpack some things that have been packed away for a long time.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, Jennifer, this has been a wonderful and beautiful discussion.
It really has.
With you about all of these characters. And thank you for opening up and talking about your experiences.
Yeah.
This is Unhinged. So you want to talk about what's unhinged this week?
Okay. What is absolutely bloody unhinged this week?
The Boys on Amazon Prime.
Listen. Okay. You got me into The Boys initially back in the day. And season 1 and 2, love. Mm-hmm. Season 3, I had some notes the way it ended. Had some notes. If you're listening, Eric Kripke, I'm sure you're not. Love you and love everything you do. But I was kind of going into season 4 of The Boys a little like apathetic. Like I'm invested. I want to see. Mm-hmm. I love Gen V that came out last summer. That show was great, but I wasn't ready at midnight when it dropped.
Right.
You watched it pretty quickly after it came out and you were like, I'm on it. I can't do this.
It was tough. I got 3 episodes in and I remember telling you, hey, I don't think I can continue because this show is just so graphically violent that it was making me sick. Oof. It was very difficult to continue to be invested in these storylines and these characters, which I've been invested in since season 1,
right?
Because of the amount of graphic violence. And I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to go for the shock value. It is, well, HBO does this, so we got to get like take it to the extreme,
right?
And it's just too much for me. It is unhinged, the amount of graphic violence that is in this show. I'm invested in the characters.
Yeah.
I want to know what happens. I will probably continue to watch, although I'll look away for much of it. But some of it is just so over the top. Season 3, there were so many instances in season 3 that I'm like,
well, the blowing up someone's urethra was one of them for me.
Yeah. It's just too much. So.
Yeah. I watched the first episode and I texted you. I was like, this show is absolutely unhinged. Yes. It's never not been unhinged, but it's now this like extra level.
It's an unhinged show.
Yeah. And I got through episode 3 and I was like, okay, I'm locked in. I think regardless of some of the notes that I have, Anthony Starr as Homelander is one of the
stellar,
most intense portrayals of a villain I've ever seen.
I don't know how he unpacks it at night.
Yeah, what place do you have to go to? Maybe he goes to the Brian Cox School of Acting. You just show up and act.
Love
he's
Brian
not
Cox.
Jeremy Stronging about where he's like embodying the character. Maybe he's because I think Anthony Starr he's Australian or he's a Kiwi. I can't remember.
I'd love to see
Carl Urban. I don't know, but he's Australian or a Kiwi, so maybe he comes from that school of like show up, get into it, go home.
Yeah,
whatever. That's one of my favorite quotes from that article. I love Jeremy Strong. I love Succession, but Brian Cox is like, you just show up and act like it's not that serious.
Yes.
I think they have. To me, they've just created a bit of a corner for themselves on the show because
where do we go from here?
Where do you go? At what point does Homelander or whoever like they just start killing everybody? Like it's Batman and the Joker. You know, he and Butcher can't exist. Like they have to have the other one alive to like have this focus. Yeah. They're always circling each other. And I mean, they announced they're going to have a season 5. It's going to be the last season. So to me, I'm like, well, the stakes aren't super high for some of the people because they're not going to get rid of Homelander. I doubt they're going to let Butcher die of his mask. They're going to save him. I'm sure some other characters will be killed, maybe, but the stakes are lower to me because at this point, if they spent the whole last season trying to get Soldier Boy as the weapon and then it didn't even pan out. It's like
fizzled out.
I don't know what we're doing.
What's happening here?
I don't know what we're doing.
Yeah.
And look, I love the fact that this show is just it's not even is it a jab if it's overt? I mean, they're lampooning the far right,
sure,
the incels, the MAGA, all that, and I think they do a good job. But sometimes I'm like, hey,
we get it,
and
we're living it.
I don't need to like find it in my escapism. Mean,
yeah, that's it.
I like the firecracker character as the podcaster who's, you know, all into conspiracy theories about how you can order sex slaves and like they because that's what those people do. They say the wildest shit.
Sure.
And sometimes I'm like, okay, I got you. And they, you know, they name check January 6th and I think you can still do that. And it used to be a little bit more deft. And now it's just, here's what it is.
In your face.
And
over the top.
Yeah.
So it's unhinged.
It is. And the last thing I'll say is I love that Frenchie played by Tomar Capone. I hope I'm saying his name right. Mm-hmm. I love that he's in a relationship with a man and everybody is cheering him on, like supportive, like let's get this for you. We love it. I don't understand why they built he and Kimiko's relationship up. And that one of my favorite things about season 4 was the musical sequence where they're dancing and singing in the hospital.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden she's like, yeah, I'm going to help get you laid by this guy. I'm like, wait,
what happened?
I want Frenchie to be with whoever. I just felt like there was no, I don't need a build up to a gay romance. I'm not saying that like, because we hook up with people, whoever, like, I don't need the build up to a gay romance. Like, I don't need to see them meet and introduce. They can have a history. My problem is the build up with the Kimiko of it all, you know, and then.
Yeah, they built these two characters up and, you know, kind of left us hanging on that relationship.
Yeah. I want to see how it ends. I'm sure it'll end with Butcher and Homelander still alive, having, you know.
Or having killed one another. I don't know.
Well, but then what's this last season going to be? We're going to watch everybody try to rebuild? I want Stan Edgar to come back. Giancarlo Esposito is Stan Edgar.
Okay, well.
Bring him back.
We're bringing people back. Can I bring Elizabeth Shue?
Well, he's not dead in the universe, and she is. But yeah, sure, bring her back.
Bring her back.
Elizabeth Shue. I hope she shows up in the last season of Cobra Kai, which, speaking of Unhinged, that show got...
I almost texted you and be like, did you see the trailer drop?
I did, and I was like watching it like this. I mean, it's just... That show was so... Okay, we can't get into the weeds on that. Loved Cobra Kai in the beginning, but it went... William Zabka's hot, though, and if you're listening, he's probably a MAGA person, though, isn't he?
Do you want to talk about the performance of Deep?
Oh, yes. Okay. And I also love Chase Crawford as the Deep.
Love his performance as the Deep.
Oh,
he's having so much fun.
He is. And he's hysterical.
I love actors who get into these supporting roles who just get to have fun.
Yes. I mean, he gets to do this most insane shit. He's having a romantic affair with an octopus.
I love it. I love it so much.
And it's like...
I mean, I'm not like loving the whole bestiality of it all, but I love how much fun they're having with this.
Yeah. And I love that, you know, the first episode, he's talking to Ashley and she's like, no, motherfucker, you can't. He wants to do something. She's like, not with PETA breathing down our necks about the whole octopus thing. And she's like, you got rid of it, right? He's like, yeah.
Wink, wink, wink.
Cut to later on, and he's in his room, in his closet. He's got the octopus in a tank. Yeah. And she's talking to him, and the octopus sounds like it's underwater, which I guess
we could go away.
We could live in the ocean. No one will judge us.
Everyone loves you in the ocean.
So fun. And even when Homelander is just being a psychopath, and he's like telling him to give A-Train a blowjob, what does Chase Crawford say? He's like, it's just sex, bro. Or the way he says it. Yeah. Look, the Deep, they're all terrible. Mm-hmm. Like the Deep, A-Train, all of them are terrible.
Yeah, I love his performance as the Deep. Of course, he'll always be Nate Archibald, Gossip Squirrel.
But what range for Chase Crawford? Good for him. Yeah, he's great as a Deep. I mean, he's a piece of shit. He starts out, he tries to sexually assault Annie.
Absolutely a piece of shit.
And it's the Chase Crawford himself as this role is hysterical. So
what a great character to write, to make them anything, and make them the worst person in the world, but also just a ridiculous farce of a character.
It's insane.
Yeah,
but the show is insane. But I will continue to watch it.
It's unhinged.
It is unhinged.
Well, Jenny, I think this is the end of our Pride episode.
Yeah.
Thanks for having this conversation with me, and thank you all for listening and tuning in for it.
Yeah, thank you. And just a reminder, much like this episode is coming out after Pride Month is over, Pride should be every day. Mm-hmm. Be proud to be you. Be proud to be you in any way that is, as long as you're not hurting anybody. Live your truest life and be your most authentic self, and
love who you love.
Love who you love, because it's just love. That's what it is at the end of the day.
I love you, Jenny.
Love you too.
Thank you for tuning in to Once More Unhinged. These episodes come out every Wednesday, and please be sure to check out our Once More Rewatch podcast, which we release episodes every Friday.
Yeah, this Friday is a big one for us. We're having our first double feature on Buffy.
We are on Buffy the Vampire Slayer season 2.
Yes, we're going to have What's My Line part 1 and part 2, our review coming out on Friday. So it'll be a 6-hour episode. It's going to be fine.
Tune in.
Woo!
For more unhinged content like this, please follow us on social media. We are at Once More Podcast on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and Threads.
Yep.
We are the Once More Pod on Twitter, although we're hardly ever on Twitter.
Yeah.
You can listen to us and watch us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio.
Yep. Please like and subscribe. It really helps with the algorithm. Super easy. Just click the button.
Hit the like button. Leave us a comment and connect with us.
We would greatly appreciate it.
Unhinged is produced by us. I am Ryan Something.
And I am Jen Katz. And happy Pride.
Love who you love.
Bye.